What?
Happy Friday anyway, wherever you're tuned in, and thank you very much for choosing this as the way to start your day. It's the Situation Room on Spice FM, on KTN Home, on YouTube, and on Facebook. 15th. How many days to the 29th of October?
A month and 14 days.
Okay.
Yes. 1.5 months to Kenya's largest single-day athletics event, and that's the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. It's happening on the 29th of October. It's the 20th edition, so this is a good thing. 20 years running and making an impact on the lives of many. How can you participate? Log on to www.nairobimarathon.com. Register with 2,000 shillings and get your shoes on and start training. Come the 29th of October, at very early hours in the morning, everybody's going to come around and start running for this good cause right at Uhuru Gardens. And all of the proceeds go towards the Future Makers program, which helps young people, especially girls and people with disability, to learn, earn, and grow. It's a special one. It's 20 years in the making. Come be a part of this year.
Yes, indeed. And two people who will be participating in that, hopefully, are in the studio. Anthony Mulinge is the managing director of a company called Fresh Life Initiative, and Willis Ombai is the CEO of the Water Sector Trust Fund, commonly known as the Water Fund. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Am I right? You'll be running with us on the 29th.
Sure.
Running, I mean, what is running? Should have said something more intensive, like, like climbing Everest. Like running water. Or flushable toilets or something like that.
Now that's a challenge.
That's a big one. Karibuni sana to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Asante.
Good to have you here.
Yeah, sure.
City has the day's proverb, and this week's proverbs have been from the country of
Sierra Leone. This is the final proverb from this country. Well, it's not as though proverbs from the country have come to an end, but this is the last day that we are quoting and interacting with proverbs from that country.
Okay.
Sweet rice is eaten quickly. Okay.
Anthony, you laugh.
Why? I think it's very apt in terms of what he said. Yeah. It's
What's your
actually
interpretation of it? How do you relate to this proverb? It's like you have some experience.
No.
With sweet
It's actually-
rice. Yes.
It's actually everything that is sweet is eaten quickly.
Why?
It's a nature of life.
Mhm.
Just nature of life.
You want to finish it. You don't want to stop eating.
Yeah.
So you end up eating quickly.
Not really.
Eh.
It's like you don't want people to ask you for it.
Actually, that was my thought. Maybe you are a little...
You don't want to share.
Yeah, you don't want to share. Because it's too sweet.
So what do you think the Sierra Leoneans are saying with this, Willis? What's the deeper meaning of this proverb?
Well, it will be contextual, so I might not be really able to discern into detail what it would mean, but perhaps sweet things are better done faster to achieve the desired impact from where I sit. Like we support a lot of programs. If I take it in my context, it will be that if we are able to do this, support these projects very fast, people will get the impact and get water. But now I've contextualized it to my situation of work.
Yes. That's your interpretation in your context. Anthony, is it the same?
I think it's the same because anything that you have bigger impact if you really believe in it. Because if it's actually sweeter, it means it makes a difference to you. Yeah. So the earlier you do it, the better.
The better.
Yeah.
Willis, what's the Water Sector Trust Fund?
Thanks. Water Sector Trust Fund, one, as you have mentioned, is a government parastatal, a state-owned enterprise, which is charged with the responsibility for financing of water projects for increased coverage, water coverage, sanitation coverage, particularly in the underserved areas and also marginalized areas. A lot of the time we work with county governments because, water is a devolved function. So as much as we still work with other national entities, we work with grassroots organizations which are aligned to the county government.
What does funding mean? I thought we fund these things from our budget.
Yeah, we fund really. If you look at the water sector, most of the resources, of course, as a country, There are development priorities, so you will have education, and we know the sectors that take a lot of money. And when it comes to the water sector, we have to look for additional resources. So Trust Fund is one of those proud institutions that help the government to look for additional resources to finance water. So in that, we have managed to have lots of support from the World Bank, from EU, from Danida, from Finland, from the Gates Foundation, from KfW, the German Development Bank. And so we complement a lot what the National Treasury is doing. Of course, the National Treasury still really helps us in making the cooperation agreements and subsidiary agreements which are required. So we do believe that with the financing gap that has always been there in the water sector, we complement that by getting these donor or development partners to support. So that brings the link into how we also become a financing entity.
You get it. So like giving us the example of the last financial year,
Yes.
how much resources did you manage to mobilize? First of all, do you work with a target at the beginning of the financial year?
Sure.
Or do you look at projects? How much did you manage to mobilize last year against what target?
Maybe just to be a little systematic, we have a 5-year strategic plan. And our last strategic plan ended last year. And we had a target of raising 23 billion. That was from 2018 to 2022. And out of that, we did 86% of it, which is very significant. And that has made us to think, how can we help Kenyans more? We have now raised it in the current strategic plan to raise 52 billion. That is from this year, because we have just started with the new administration. Up to 2027, we hope to get around 52 billion. And we have structured this into the different sources and ways of raising the money through the strategies which have been documented. We actually, our fundamental, if you go to Water Act 2016, our fundamental mandate first starts with mobilizing resources. Then you use the resources to finance. Then we monitor to see whether value for money has been achieved.
Okay.
So we are always, I can tell you even 2 entities that we have just done the recent mobilization. We have, with World Bank, we have just recently mobilized around 8 billion in a program called Horn of Africa that will be targeting Turkana, Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, and Garissa. So that is just for 1 year. Currently, the 6 coastal counties will benefit from a program from an institution called Children Investment Fund Foundation. And this will be around 5 billion Kenya shillings. So you can see the values of money that we are talking to and the impact that if everything is done well, they will have in the people of Kenya.
How long have you been in existence?
Around 20 years.
Okay.
We were established under Water Act 2002 when the water reforms took place at the first instance, and then re-established again under Water Act 2016. Under Water Act 2002, we were Water Services Trust Fund, mainly as a mechanism for collecting or a basket for donor funds. But under Water Act 2016, we have been given a little bit bigger mandate in terms of a financing entity, meaning that we are allowed to venture into several processes and strategies to raise more money for increasing water access, sanitation, and also water resource management.
Okay.
So when you ply your trade,
Yes.
for instance, let's say you're working with Mombasa County, as you suggested.
Yes.
So the resident water management body in that county rather,
Yes.
when whatever it is that you're helping them achieve is actually accomplished,
Yeah.
it is their name that we will hear as the individuals who have achieved this? Or do we know specifically
This is water fund.
this is water fund?
Thanks. I would want to point out first that in Mombasa, particularly, we have worked with the two entities. The county, for instance, we have worked with Mombasa Water Company and also Coast Waterworks Development Agency.
Okay.
What happens is that we normally do a call for proposal. Different programs have different modalities at certain point. So we do a call for proposal. The companies or the entities apply. We evaluate the projects that they have proposed, and we get into an agreement through a financing contract. Now, there are various ways. We have terms and conditions, the branding, and they like the kind of engagement that we get with them before. We also have staff who are working with them to see from one point to another what they are able to do. So I would say in terms of visibility, we try as much. And of course, the development partners who are giving us the money have also the terms and conditions that we have signed up for. And we have to make sure that as a collaborative event, venture, the water company, the county government, WSTF or Water Fund, and the donors are visible as having have worked together to support
deliver on the project.
Deliver the project.
Okay.
Sure.
So, of the projects that you've worked in, point us to one when you say this is an example of what it is that we have done, this thing you've been enjoying and seeing, that is us.
Yes. Let me pick one with the Coast Waterworks Development Agency. There is the main water supply project called Baricho. Baricho is under the management of Coast Waterworks Development Agency. During the COVID time, there was a ministerial statement and guidance that water should not be disconnected to to the normal populace or Kenyan citizens, because water was very critical in managing COVID. You had to have running water to wash your hands and manage every other thing that had to do, manage most of the things that had to do with prevention of COVID. And so we gave a lot of money for the intervention to make sure that even though they were not collecting the tariffs or the revenues, they were still able to have the...
Oh, so you financed the operations?
We financed the operations and
of
mainly
the water provider.
And mainly Kenya Power, through payment of Kenya Power. This was to a tune of more than 600 million, and we did this collaboratively with World Bank and of course the same ministry help in terms of making sure that this money is allocated, but it is through us. Secondly, maybe that looks a little mega. In Nanyuki or in Laikipia, we have worked with the water company, that is the Nanyuki Water Company, to support a project getting water from Aberdare, the source, to Solio. Solio is a settlement scheme next to Nanyuki town, where the IDPs are relocated from different parts of the country, and that project is still working to date. We got money from the governments of Finland, Sweden, and also Kenya government. So ours is to look for these resources, work with the entities on the ground, which are mainly water companies, as I've said, and make sure that the water is availed. They do the contractual works, the building.
You mobilize the resources.
We mobilize the resources and finance.
I want to come to Anthony. Willis has talked a lot about what the water sector trust fund does, and he's talked about water projects. You're in the toilet side of business, the sanitation side. He hasn't mentioned a thing, but first tell us what's Fresh Life Institute.
So Fresh Life is an organization that has been set up to support the efforts of the government and the county governments to provide sanitation as one of the SDGs, SDG goals, to provide safe sanitation for communities. So we started our operations in about 2011, and our biggest mandate was to try and move into informal settlements and ensure that people in those settlements have access to safe and affordable sanitation. And we've been operating in Nairobi, we've operating now in Kisumu and in Eldoret to try and solve that problem.
What does your operation mean? When you say you've been operating?
It means we actually provide toilets for people living in those informal settlements. And then the people that do not have access to those toilets or have already another solution, we ensure that the waste that is in those particular settlements is actually safely disposed of. So, for example, if you have a pit latrine, most of the people, if you have a small plot, you have 10 tenants or 20 or 30.
Yeah.
Most people would actually provide us a pit latrine, but then at the end of the day, when it starts raining, it starts flooding.
Yeah.
So people ask, where is that waste going to go? So we give an option for people living in those areas to safely dispose of the waste.
So you offer exhauster services?
Not exhauster. Because exhauster means people come and pick. In informal settlements, it's not. People do not pay for such services. What you find is a guy comes and connects a pump, pumps it out into the nearest drain.
Yep.
Yes, nearest drain, nearest environment, anything outside. They don't look. The exhauster, when you see a honeysucker, it's not for those guys.
It doesn't come from the slum areas.
So what honeysucker is for people in Karen and those places.
So what do you do?
So we give them a place. So in those kind of environments, we actually give them a place where they can. First, we get the community who actually disposes of that waste. So we organize them into a CBO. We give them a place for them to safely dispose of that waste. So we have something what we call Mtaa Fresh. So Mtaa Fresh means you can take out that waste and take it to a place where it's going to be connected to the sewer and it's going to go out. So we separate the solids, dry them, ensure they're safe for the environment, and then we can take them. We can actually safely dispose of those things. Yeah.
Okay. What kind of impacts have we seen that this has on societies? Because now we're looking into a situation whereby, still, from what we see, adequate in terms of management of the little water that there is, and then making sure that waste is taken care of, especially for those places where the sanitation services don't exist. How have we seen that this has impacted communities, made differences over time?
So I'll answer that question in maybe two ways. Number one, so we provide a toilet that is waterless. So our toilet is called, it's actually a dry container-based sanitation. So what happens is we give you, so we did a census of about 50,000 different plots in Nairobi in informal settlements, and we actually found about 40% of those people have no sanitation. So you can imagine there's women, the children. So at night you can't go anywhere. So we actually still have the problem
They didn't even have the pit latrine.
They have nothing.
40%.
40%, and then about another 30% have no access. Have a form of, it's actually just a waste that goes into a river or something like that.
Yeah.
So when we did that census, it was actually an eye opener for us, because we saw how much we actually need to provide this as a solution. So what we've actually now done is arranged all those guys and given them a toilet in a lot of those plots. And the toilet, what it does is it's a shallow container, so we collect every 1 or 2 days, and that waste, we ensure that waste is safely treated and disposed of. Yeah. So in terms of what's the impact for the community, number one is we find there's a lot of diseases that come out from not having not having
Access to
safe
toilet.
access to. So there's cholera outbreaks, there's typhoid, there's all those kind of things. So every time we provide toilets in those areas, we find we actually see a reduction of diseases. When we look at the environment itself, just the safe management of those of that waste is actually a benefit to the communities that we operate in.
How does this toilet work again?
So
You
the
say it's a
toilet-
container.
Yeah, so we have a toilet that it's called a Fresh Life toilet. So it's a urine diverting. So it's two containers. So it's a urine diverting. So there's a urine part and there's a fecal waste part. So we separate the urine and the fecal waste, and then we collect them separately. So the benefit.
Are you
of that-
digging on the ground?
No. So we provide a container. So we dig it's just enough to take the container.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we put one container for the waste and the one for the urine, and then we employ youth in that particular community, and we take that every day out of that toilet.
Where does it go to?
So we take the waste, the urine, we will dispose it through the normal sewer system, because they'll collect them, take them to our collection center, dispose them through the normal sewer system. But the waste, we repurpose it into insect protein, into fertilizer, and into charcoal briquettes.
Sorry.
Yeah, talk to me.
Solid poop becomes charcoal briquettes.
Yeah.
So
let me-
It's not very far fetched. It's not very far fetched, because if you grew up in the village,
Charcoal ni makaa bwana.
cow
Makaa
dung, dried cow dung,
became
was-
briquettes.
it was fuel. Yes, it was used for cooking. So it's not something that I find far fetched. What I'm wondering, why I'm asking the question, is this: is there no use that urine can be put to?
We're actually currently working with partners to try to research how we can extract the minerals in urine into fertilizer. So that is still work in progress. We actually hoping that we should be able to find because you'll find in certain countries people collect urine from rabbits into
Yes,
something
actually, I've
else.
seen that, yeah.
So we are actually hoping that we'll be able to find a solution. But today, the current human waste that we collect, we actually repurpose it into fertilizer and into insect protein.
That insect protein thing, I don't get it. So first of all, if I am just to go through with what you've said, this toilet, you're not digging to the ground. It's not a pit latrine.
It's not a pit latrine.
It's a container. And then it is separating the urine from the hard stool.
Yeah,
At what point? At point of production, emission.
production.
Okay? Are we together, Ndu?
I'm just
It is separating these things.
following you.
Then you've employed local youth to collect these two containers
Yeah.
and take them to your mtaa fresh, right? And this is where then you amalgamate all the hard stool and you make it into insect protein.
So let me try and break it down properly.
Yeah.
So we collect. So we give you a toilet. It's a urine diverting. So we collect the urine separately. We collect the fecal waste separately. What we do, we consolidate the fecal waste, and then what we do, we transport it to a sister company that actually repurposes that fecal waste into now all these other reusable products. Yes. So it's not. It's and the urine we send it through the drain. So it's not like. Actually, let me say, we actually take it when we take the fecal waste. So we now take it to actually treat it properly into those products.
So it becomes something useful into the
Something
markets.
useful, yes.
Now, because this sounds like a private sector sanitation service, how does it link with, you said you're supporting the government in provision of sanitation services in informal sectors. Where is the government coming in?
So now the government comes in terms of, would normally, this service that we're providing, all these guys that are actually using this service would have actually flying toilets as a problem. So all this waste would have found itself in the water environment that we're actually currently working in. So when we give them this toilet, we are able to take out all this waste away from the environment and safely treat it and ensure that it benefits the communities that we work in.
You know what is actually strange is that if you look at research that has been done on human urine, the very thing that people say is found in rabbit urine is the same that is claimed about human urine. In fact, it's argued that it can be a very safe alternative to the chemical fertilizers that we use. Yes. So the argument is that every time you are flushing the toilet, you're flushing away very good fertilizer. Yes.
You're flushing away food security.
Yes.
And that's actually the reason why we're doing that research, to actually be able to take the benefit from the urine.
Who funds you? Is that where Willis comes in?
That's why we are together with Willis. So we have philanthropic funders, and then we are also looking to work closely with the government to be able to fund this kind of research.
Okay. In Nairobi, there is one entity that is allowed by law to handle sanitation and water provision. And even if you're a private water vendor, then you have to go to a regulator to get a license to do this job. Now, you are providing toilet services in a Nairobi that has Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company. What's the link?
So normally, because remember I mentioned we work in 3 cities. So not only are we in Nairobi, but we also work in Kisumu, we work in Eldoret. So the mandate that we get, we sign a memorandum of understanding with the utility companies in those counties. So we'll currently in the process of doing one for Nairobi. We've signed one with the Eldowas, which is Eldoret Water and Sanitation Company. We've signed one with Kiwasco, which is Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company. And what happens is with that MOU allows us to now move into the informal settlements to be able to provide that service in those counties.
I don't know, this service that is provided is genuinely is a really good thing. But every time we talk about informal settlements, it's like everything that goes into informal settlements is an emergency of sorts. It's as though it isn't planned for. So unless organizations such as the one that you had come in and assist, everything again is always an emergency of sorts.
It's actually not an emergency. So what happens is the government sets up a target of what they actually want to achieve. But then what they realize quickly is that, for instance, in Kenya, sanitation is connected to sewers. But then you come and discover very, very quickly, sewers are very expensive. And you're not going to be able to provide sewers in all those places that are quite actually unplanned.
Why?
Because people move from rural, it's called rural-urban migration. So you come into Nairobi, you look for a place, the Mabati, because you don't know where you're going to live. And then the government has no plan for those informal settlements.
Why? Are they not citizens of Kenya? I mean, that question is it's an unfair question.
I know.
It's actually an unfair question.
I want us to take a break and then you think about it, because I've even seen a comment here by somebody who's saying, look, we talk about this, why not agitate for a proper sewerage service for the citizens instead of, these small ones? How does it benefit us? Like you're saying, there are challenges of government has challenges of getting that. But Joy says even in rural areas, counties do not provide sewage system, but they'll be running around homes, punishing people and forcing them to bring down their own constructed toilets. That's something to discuss. What is the link between what the government should be providing, what the citizen has a right to access, what the private sector then comes to do, and how the PPPs should work, and all that. 23 minutes to 8, Kenya's biggest conversation this morning is talking about sanitation, particularly in urban areas and in urban slums of this country. Willis Ombai is the CEO of the Water Sector Trust Fund, and Anthony Mulinge is the Managing Director of Fresh Life Initiative.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The Situation Room hosting Willis Ombai, CEO of Water Sector Trust Fund, and Anthony Mulinge from the Fresh Life Initiative. We're talking about urban sanitation. Now, El Nino is coming. We've already been told El Nino is coming. And Anthony, you've told us, once you've been working in these informal settlements, pit latrines, problem with pit latrines, it rains, it floods, the whole thing gets up and is spread into the environment. Even without those, over 400,000 people in informal settlements don't have access to a toilet at all. So all that is going into the environment. This is basically fecal waste in the environment. El Nino is coming. That is going to enter back into homes. Sanitation hasn't been provided by government in these areas. Sanitation is a right. Article 43 of the Constitution provides for a right to safe housing, sanitation, health, and others, economic and social rights. The government is a signatory to the SDGs. SDG number 6 is about sanitation and water. We have an entire Ministry of Water and Sanitation and Irrigation. But then, millions of people don't have access to toilet. And Anthony, there's something that you said. Children, women, when it comes to a certain time of night, they cannot get out to go use a toilet because of security and all, and because there's no access to a toilet. So this is an injustice to a huge sector of our population. Willis,
Yes.
what does your ministry say about this? Is this a policy?
Thanks. Thanks. I think that is a good observation. One, the ministry, if you remember the history, we never had the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. Over the last 2 years, the shift has been just from the naming that sanitation is given the prominence to so that Kenyans know that it is a priority for the government. Secondly, the ministry over the last 1 to 2 years has developed what we call National Water and Sanitation Investment Plan, which in line with the Constitution and also development priorities at 2030, year 2030, there is projected realization of universal access to sanitation. And if you look at the projected investment, around 504 billion Kenya shillings between now and between the last 2 years, I can say 2021 to 2030, the expectation is that we will have everyone accessing a universal, everyone accessing
In the next 7 years.
in the next 7 years, and those are their plans. In fact, most of the donors now, or development partners, and even what my brother here is saying, because there is a big recognition for the private sector. The financing gap which is there, it's complementary that we work with the private sector to make sure that the resources which are required are realized. So you can see the kind of plan. Come to Water Sector Trust Fund, for instance, because I might not be able to very much authoritatively speak on behalf of the entire country or the ministry, but we have very deliberate plans in terms of what we want to achieve. The whole belief in the ministry and other sector institutions is that sanitation is dignity. If you want, water is life, but sanitation is dignity.
And dignity is a big thing.
And dignity is a big thing. And that is what we try to do when we support programs that touch the informal segment. I'm sorry that when I gave my introduction, you had it takes the biggest part of our budget, so there is always the bias to talk about water. But
my challenge, though, Willis,
Yes.
is whenever we think of sanitation, just like when we think of water, we think piped water.
yes,
So we are thinking big project. Start with collecting water in a big reservoir, dam,
yes,
and then put big pipes
Yeah.
bring to a certain area, clean that water, put small pipes into people's homes. Toilet, we think the same thing. You're building a house, you have toilet, big pipe, collects, takes to one place in Ruai or wherever, and treat it.
Yeah.
Now, just like Anthony was saying, in the slum areas of Nairobi, think about it. We are near Mukuru.
Yeah.
So all these Mukurus
Yeah.
do not have space for pipes to be laid.
Yes.
But the government is still thinking pipes.
And the government is telling us it's going to happen in 7 years.
No. I can talk about some practical steps. In fact, if you look at the percentage of seaward sanitation in urban areas, it's around 25-26%. And this leaves you with a huge gap that is there. So you have to talk about improved sanitation. And improved sanitation will take various shape and forms to be able to provide sanitation to these people. For instance, some of the projects that we support, we have a program supported by, financed by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and also German Development Bank, FW. Under this, we have, we call it upscaling basic sanitation for the urban poor, which we work with the various entities, the water companies, to have the toilets, even in urban areas, to have the toilets, and these toilets are emptied and taken to decentralized treatment facilities. More or less, it operates on the same model, because the value chain for sanitation starts with containment. So the containment for him will be the container that he provides, or
The toilet.
Then there is the emptying. Then there is the transport. Then there is now the final discharge into the area where you want the treatment to be done. So that is it. And when you talked about, again, some of the impacts, even the economic activities and the jobs which are created, you can also look at that. So there are those number of improved sanitation in the urban areas, which are not necessarily seaward system. Because seaward, you need a huge place. You need you need a huge land for the treatment facility.
Yeah.
You need billions of shillings, and some of these interventions that we are talking about can be done by 10-15 million or less, which is affordable. Now, currently we have, with the devolution, we have several county headquarters. These county headquarters don't have sewerage facilities, or most of them don't have. What are the options? The options are they able to then have decentralized treatment facilities, which even as the exhausters pick the waste from the septic tanks, can be safely discharged, and there is a way of treating them there. So we are talking about those simple solutions that have improved sanitation in the low-income areas.
However, they still pose a threat when it comes to a natural phenomenon like what we're about to experience in the country. And they still pose is still an issue that's posed here. And I think that remains the underlying question in today's situation, whereby we have these informal or decentralized solutions that are not permanent, that could then be toppled by the huge, copious amounts of water that we are about to experience coming in with force in the next couple of weeks. So the question is, what would be the preferred mode for sanitation? And should we not be chasing the preferred mode? Because these informal situations are likely to contribute to the disaster. And that's what we are saying here. That if we have an overarching preferred mode for sanitation, for water provision and management, is that not what we should be aspiring to and implementing, even as much as there is a plan?
I think you are right, but the whole government approach, I think, for now is that we have the housing plan and how it should be used to upgrade the slums. That is now a policy at some level. But we should also have alternatives. Most of these things come with the designs. When you talk of a decentralized treatment facility, for instance, there are specific sites where this should be located, and some of the considerations are the gradient and how it can be able to forestall things like being flooded. So it cannot just be in any place. The government policy, or if you ask me, what we are trying to do is to make sure that apart from sewer, then there are these authentic strategies, options, and technologies which can be used. Otherwise, if we hope to get, because the most and ideal solution is sewerage.
Is the
for
pipe
us.
sewer.
But if you also go to advanced countries, they also tell you now they have much better technologies which are able.
I think so. I mean, the fixation with a huge pipe and all in this day and age doesn't have to be the only way. If there are newer, better, more efficient ways, the thing is, the solution is what's important, not the type.
Yeah.
If the type is more efficient and it comes in, it's okay, it works. Question though, Anthony.
Yeah.
We are approaching El Nino. And the kind of areas that you work in, if you look at them, can you say that there will be a danger of sanitation-related ailments that come out of this because of flooding and all?
There will definitely be a danger because all those pit latrines are going to flood, and then the waste will get into the communities. Then we'll have all these communicable diseases, the cholera, the typhoid, etc. So what we provide is, number one, anybody, because remember we was talking about a plot.
Yeah.
A guy has 10 houses. He only has one small space, and the pit latrine gets flooded.
Yeah.
And those guys, it's not like he's going to dig.
And
if it was a rural
everybody
area, he would have moved to another area and dug another pit latrine somewhere else, and farther and farther and farther. But now in Nairobi, it's the space.
That's it.
Is
That's the
constrained.
only space available.
That's the only space. And then so the only thing he can get is bring a guy to try and pump out that waste into the drain, which again impacts his neighbors. Yeah. So when we give you a Fresh Life toilet, it's actually a container that we're going to ensure, number one, the water is actually not going to get.
So it doesn't get flooded.
It doesn't get flooded because we are going to collect from it every day. Every day, because we've employed the youth in that community.
But that's the day it'll rain.
No, sorry.
That's the day it rains.
Even if
Is
forget
it
about
raised?
the rain, it's raised.
Okay.
It's actually raised and it's concreted around. So there's no way water is going to find itself in that particular space. And then we will ensure that the usage, because we're collecting every day, so the usage never actually gets flooded.
It'll never be full.
Yes, it'll never get full. And then the other one is, you see, with the pit latrine, very many usage, and then it's many years of usage. Will definitely get.
Is this your solution? How much cheaper is it if you compare it to the pipe sewer sanitation?
It's probably roughly, and this is my estimate, you'd not quote me, but it would be about a third of the cost of providing a mall.
And in terms of
sewage.
efficiency,
Yes.
is it more efficient?
It's actually much more efficient because we're actually collecting every day, safely disposing, and guaranteeing that waste is properly treated.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. You're providing a very valuable solution to an existing problem. And yet, it's a problem that doesn't need to be a problem. See, when you talk about these settlements, these people don't arrive in Mukuru in one day. The government watches as the numbers grow.
Yep.
They're not invisible.
Yes. And the services we're talking about are just as needed when there are 10 families as when there are 100. This county government, as our other county governments, have planners. They even have a blueprint of what it is that should happen in the city. Now, you talk about affordable housing and slum upgrading. But that term slum upgrading is... So what are you doing in the slum? Making it a bigger, better slum? Yes, it is an oxymoron. No, anyway, but I know what you mean. You want to provide decent, affordable housing.
Yes.
That's the term that is being used.
Yeah.
My problem seems to be this. Every time you come up with solutions it's like you're entrenching the government indifference to finding lasting solutions.
It's actually not. It's not. we are actually not impacting that. Some problems come faster.
What you're doing is not negative.
Yes, I agree.
What you're doing is very positive,
Yeah.
and it's necessary, and it must be done. I am simply saying, okay, let me draw a parallel. It's like when you have people investing in private schools or private hospitals, the government takes a back seat.
Says, okay, there's a solution out there. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a solution out there. I don't see. I mean, the same citizens going to these places. Now, what we're discussing right now has a profound impact on very many people, because these low-income areas where the vast number of people in our cities live.
Yeah.
But that having been said, how closely do you work with the parent ministry that Brother Michael comes from?
I'd like Willis to comment on that, and then we'll...
Yes, how closely do you work?
Thanks. I think that is a good question. Number one, the ministry sets the policies and the procedures and the rules. So a framework is given to private sector how to operate. There are sanitation policy, and they need to know who works here. They get those MOUs. That is very important. Number two is in terms of the financing that they do. This is recognized because there is a huge financing gap in the sector. So that when they come with the resources, that is very important. Currently, we are organizing for something like an investors conference, taking note of these opportunities which are there for them to come and fill the gap. I don't want to say that the government is running away from its responsibility. It's a question of complementarity and different roles that different entities can undertake to make sure that we still have the same objective.
You see, from where you sit, there are things you understand the government that we don't.
Yes.
The things that you see that we don't.
Yeah.
So with the limited visibility I have,
Yeah.
that is what I base my conclusion on.
Yeah.
But it's not really that limited, because if indeed the very things that you are saying were done in the manner that you're saying they should be done, and the finances used in the way we keep saying they should be, these problems that we're talking of, even with regards to El Nino, we'd be discussing solutions, what it is that is going to be done about it, instead of wondering, why, now that El Nino is coming, what are we going to do? The discussion would be, yes, with El Nino, this is what we're going to do. We've already done this, because this discussion didn't start last month. The weather people have been telling us about El Nino for quite some time now. Yes. That is why I asked how closely you work, because some of these things can be forestalled. Some of these things can be rectified long before they become a menace or they become a big problem.
So it's an attitude problem, not an attitude, but it's an approach issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
The government recognizing that it has a mandate to provide sanitation and other services to the people.
Yes.
The government recognizing its own limitations
Yes.
and its capabilities, but also recognizing its facilitative role. Yeah. The private sector being then encouraged to come up and provide solutions. They can invest in research and development. They can invest in this and the other. The government also encouraging the academia to do more research. For example, can we turn all this urine that we have in the sewers into something that, instead of importing fertilizer, maybe we can just be making our own fertilizer here. And all those things. And then Anthony and the others in the private sector being able to work with the government. We want to thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Asanteni sana. Anthony Mulinge is the managing director for a company called Fresh Life Initiative. He says they provide sanitation solutions in the slum areas of Nairobi, Kisumu, Eldoret so far, right? And Willis Ombai is the CEO of the Water Sector Trust Fund. Keep it here for more conversations. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.